Can't believe they kept us here until noon. This doesn't make any sense. Beatrice was with me and my brother the entire night. She couldn't have stolen the sword of spell-eating and have murdered her father. I don't understand. Of all the people that could have done this, why would Steelwind suspect a blind woman? Mr. Cuthbert, could you defend Beatrice against these awful charges? Don't think I even need to. What? Beatrice is Ruby's client. I'm sure that she'll be the one defending her. Well, that certainly puts my mind at ease. What's wrong? I don't know if I'm asking too much, but could you still investigate the crime scene for me, Mr. Cuthbert? What? But we just said that Miss Tamora will. I know, and I don't doubt her abilities, but Beatrice is a dear friend of mine. I'd like every chance for her to be found innocent. Of course, I'll also compensate you for your services. Consider yourself blessed. A commoner like you could only dream of a job like this. Alaric. I can't believe this. What's wrong? The people in the coat room said that they couldn't find my sword. They told me that someone must have stolen it. What? We can probably keep an eye out for it while we investigate the manor. This might all just be some kind of mistake. I hope so. But anyways, where should we start first? We should head to the crime scene. I remember hearing they found Lord Frigga's body in his study. Let's go over there. What a mess. I wasn't expecting to see you here, Mr. Cuthbert. I thought Ruby Tamora was defending this case. Wallace? What are you doing here? He's here as my aide for the investigation. Anyways, we're here on behalf of Crown Prince Asta. He hired us to investigate this case independently. I see. I'm sure he just wants to make sure the investigation goes smoothly. Well, if you're here on behalf of His Highness, I'll do whatever I can to help you. Investigate! Ugh. What's wrong? You can't see it, but the entire room is covered in traces of abjuration magic. Everything is glowing white. Right, that makes sense. There were several anti-magic fields covering the manor. Those fields probably left traces of abjuration everywhere. I won't bother showing you the traces of abjuration I find while we're here.
Repario Arcanum!
But aside from that, there's a trace of illusion magic where the body was. The assailant must have used some kind of magical disguise. Or they turn themselves invisible. Well, we got the autopsy report. We've seen it before, of course. It's a bookshelf. It's filled with loads and loads of books. I wonder what kind of books Lord Frigga owned. Wait a minute, they're all blank. All of his real books are on the floor, on his desk. There's a window that leads into this room. Could the murderer have escaped through here? No, the window doesn't open and the glass is magically reinforced. There's a large mahogany table at the end of the room. Lord Trigger must have done his work here. Mahogany, mahogany. There are several books about economics and politics. It doesn't look like there's anything of note. It's a fireplace. Could the murderer have entered through here? That wouldn't be possible. The chimney's far too narrow. Even a small child wouldn't be thin enough to fit through there. It's a painting of some sort of scholar. There's some text on it. Rook Reginar, economic scholar and aristocratic accountant. He was known in some circles as Rook the Cook, due to his ability to cook the books of the four-pillar houses. Rook the Cook. Sometimes I wish I could have a nickname like that. What about Crimson Demon? Not that one. Yeah, I don't think you want to be well known for cooking the books. Well, depends what kind of clientele you want, I suppose. There's a pool of blood and a chalk outline where the body must have been. What can you tell me about the murder? William Frege was found dead in this room after the lockdown was lifted. From what we can tell, his throat had been slashed open with a letter opener. The cause of death was blood loss. Both of his carotid arteries were severed. Here's the autopsy report if you want a detailed description. Were you able to find the murder weapon? Yes, the murderer left it at the crime scene. It was a letter opener owned by the victim. The murderer must have found it in this room and used it. There was one strange detail about the weapon. The handle was completely shattered. We're not sure what to make of that detail, but it's as if something crushed the handle using tremendous force. Well, I already have an idea what that was. Just having a bit of a think. I think we have a case of Mr. Dogan from Ace Attorney Investigations 2. I think something like that may have transpired. If you know, you know. And that's not really a spoiler either. That's just what he does. Next. You mentioned that there was a lockdown. Where did this happen? You didn't notice. The Inquisition did try to be discreet. But everyone noticed the commotion Beatrice and the two princes made over it. I suppose you two must have been lost in your own little world, weren't you? But, well, anyways, you said Lord Trigger's body was found after the lockdown. That means that something else must have happened prior. Supposedly, someone had broken into one of the Haraldson exhibits. One of the magical artifacts was stolen. So there was also a theft last night. Does the Manor's lockdown system behave like the one at the Imperial Academy? The systems are somewhat different. Unlike the Imperial Academy, the lockdown only prevents people from leaving or entering the manor. So not all of the rooms were locked, but what about this specific room? This room does have abjuration wards that lock the door and prevent teleportation in and out of it. And in addition to that, the system placed an anti-magic field over the manor. An anti-magic field? What is that? An anti-magic field is a spell that nullifies all magic within it. But if two overlap, they cancel each other out. 10-foot radius sphere. And the system somehow covered the entire manor in this effect. If you notice, there are several purple crystals embedded in the walls of the manor. Each of those crystals produced an anti-magic field during the lockdown. Clever, clever. But the Sword of Spell Eating is immune to it. And anybody casting a second anti-magic field would be immune to it. So no one could cast a magic during the entirety of the lockdown? Not exactly. Someone could have used the stolen artifact to circumvent it. You mentioned that someone could have used the stolen artifact to get past the anti-magic fields. Which artifact was it? It was the Sword of Spell Eating. After Lord Haraldson reported the theft, the Inquisition discreetly placed the manor on lockdown. They searched every room in the manor to try and find it, but it was eventually found in Beatrice's bedroom. And that led them to believe she had stolen it. That's correct. The King's Guard moved to arrest her, but Prince Aster ordered them to step down. It didn't look like she was planning on fleeing, so they planned to wait until after the party had ended. But then they found Lord Frigga's body. Correct. We believe that she used the stolen sword to nullify the magical locks and break into Lord Frigga's study. But if she had the sword, wouldn't she use that to commit the murder? We're not entirely sure. We have a few working theories. She might have wanted to prevent the theft from being tied to the murder. Or perhaps she had more confidence wielding a knife over a sword. Regardless of her reasons, it's clear that the sword wasn't the murder weapon. Since the body was found here, was Lord Frigga locked in this room during the lockdown? Yes, William Frigga knew that this room should have been secured. He was supposedly in a bad mood and had locked himself in this room for most of the night. He refused to let anyone into the room. The only person he spoke to after that was his daughter. His daughter? Are you talking about Miriam? No, Lord Frigga had another daughter. I'm referring to Lafay Frigga, Lord Frigga's middle child. She tried to tell her father about the theft, but he was apparently preoccupied with something else. He said that he wanted to stay in his study for the rest of the night. When did this happen? It was shortly before the lockdown was activated, a little after 1 AM. I see. I sure should. By the way, Steelwind, do you have a map of the manor? I do. Would you like a copy? Please and thank you. Floor 1. Floor 2. Ballroom, foyer, sitting room, kitchen, stairway, storage room, study, bathroom, pantry, coat room. And on the second floor we have... The stairway's kind of in a weird spot where it doesn't line up between floors, but okay. Gallery, Beerce's bedroom, bath, rooftop garden, Miriam's bedroom, Lafay's bedroom, William's bedroom. Okay. Were there any other witnesses aside from Lafay who saw Lord Frigga that night? Perhaps someone heard what happened from a nearby room. There was someone who heard the altercation, but it was quite obscured. The servant was trapped in a storage room nearby. There's an air vent that connects this room with that storage room. He supposedly heard sounds of a struggle through that vent. What did this witness hear? There were sounds of a struggle before he heard Lord Frigga choking on his own blood. When the lockdown was lifted, he informed the King's Guard of what he had heard. That's when they discovered the body. I see. Who was the servant? I believe you actually know him. His name is Jan Hughes. What a coinky-dink. I guess he found other employment. Wait, Mr. Hughes is here? I think I'm lacking a lot of information about the defendant. From the way you were both acting, you and Asta seem to know her. Your mentor didn't tell you about her? No, I try not to pry into her business. I see. I honestly don't know much about what happened either, but Beatrice was Lord Frigga's eldest daughter and the former heir to Lord Frigga. Former heir? About 5 years ago, she fled Frigga Manor and went into hiding. None of us knew where she had gone. She ignored any attempts for me to contact her. She even used her magic to prevent us from scrying her. Last night's ball was the first time in years that Asta and I had seen her. Would you happen to know why Beatrice was meeting with her father after all these years? I have some ideas, but nothing concrete. Was hoping you could tell me. Tamora and Beatrice have both refused to disclose anything about their meeting. Speaking of which, I haven't seen Tamora anywhere in the manor. As the defendant's attorney, I would have thought that she'd be here to investigate the murder alongside you. Anyways, I imagine that she met with her father to request financial aid. Why do you say that? I have it on good authority that she was deeply in debt. That's the only reason why she would speak with her father after all these years. It's also why I believe she murdered her father. You think she murdered him for his inheritance? It's the only motive that makes sense. So the first thing we need to do is narrow down the time in which the murder occurred. The body was discovered after the lockdown was lifted, and Lethe Frigga saw her father alive before it was activated. He entered his study and she watched as the lock engaged. Right, so the murder must have occurred during the lockdown. But that means that the murderer somehow got past the abjuration wards that protected this room. Those wards block teleportation, and they magically locked the only door leading into the room. Steelwind and the Inquisition believe that Beatrice used the ward of spell-eating to get past them. Regardless of what they think, we need to assume the murderer used some kind of magic nullification to get into William's study. But that's not necessarily true, is it? What if the murderer entered the room before William locked it? If they were in the room when William locked it, they would have been trapped here until he decided to leave. Not only that, they would have been discovered the moment the guards entered his study. Maybe they used some kind of invisibility. Or they could have teleported away the moment the King's Guard unlocked the door. Teleportation didn't occur. Didn't find any traces of conjuration magic. What about Celeste's theory of an invisible assailant? Well, I admit that we did find traces of illusion magic. But the moment the guards saw the body, one of them cast Detect Magic. With that spell, they would have seen any invisible people hiding in this room. Wait, you can use Detect Magic like that? Of course, it's standard procedure. Like all spells, invisibility leaves traces of magic on the person it's cast on. So mages can use Detect Magic as a way to see through invisibility. So we know for sure that they weren't here before or after the lockdown. This means that whoever committed the murder used some way to bypass the abjugative wards that protect this room. The next thing to consider is the murder weapon. It was a letter opener that was presumably owned by William Frigga. The murderer probably used it to avoid leaving evidence that incriminated them. That does not make grammatical sense, technically, but okay. The letter opener came from this room. The murderer probably wanted to avoid using a weapon that would have implicated them, So they decided to use it and leave it here after the deed was done. But that leaves a glaring hole in the prosecution's case. And what would that be, Mr. Cuthbert? Beatrice Frieger is completely blind. Even if she was somehow able to break into a tightly guarded exhibit, how did she slip past the guards and into Lord Frieger's study? Furthermore, how did she locate the letter opener if she couldn't see it in the first place? None of it makes sense. Committing this murder unseen would have been a tall order for anyone. I can hardly believe a blind person did all of this. You'd do well not to underestimate her, Mr. Cuthbert. What? You don't know her as I do. She's far more capable than you realise. I suppose I wouldn't know. The idea that Beatrice did any of this is still ludicrous. I suppose I can't change your mind about that. But I have to ask you a question, Mr. Cuthbert. What would you do if you discovered that one of your clients was guilty? What? I mean, I tend to have an insight into these sorts of things. That would never happen. I've already seen your uncanny ability to read people, but I'm only speaking hypothetically. So, what would you do if they were guilty? I suppose I'd withdraw and tell them to find another lawyer. And if no one else would represent them? I don't know. It would definitely be a hard choice for me. But I would never be able to represent them if I knew the truth. I just can't stand by and let a murderer escape justice. I see. Why do you ask? No reason. Okay. There are a lot of boxes here. What? Jan? Was that you? Oh man, what's with all the noise? I was having such a good nap too. Mr. Hughes. Whoa, it's you two. Why are you taking a nap in the storage room? I needed to take a break from all the chaos going on. King's Guard wouldn't let us leave until they finished investigating the murder. This pompous noble shooed me away when I tried sleeping on one of the couches. I didn't expect anyone to find me in here. Anyways, the prosecutor told us that you heard the murder from here during the lockdown. Do you think you could tell us what happened? We have questions. Sure, why not? My nap's kinda ruined anyways. There are several boxes in this room. They appear to contain various cleaning supplies. Oh boy. It's a stepladder. I agree. Well, that was simple. It's an air vent that leads into Lord Frieger's study. Supposedly, Jan heard the altercation between Lord Frieger and his assailant through this.
Arcanum!
I like how they acknowledged the stepladder by not acknowledging the stepladder. Very good. So you're working as a servant now? Not exactly, but I was a part of the catering staff. The twins started their own food business after Frieger threw us out of the academy. Right. Sorry about that. No, it's not your fault. Even if Redmond was still headmaster, I'm sure the board would have found some other way to get rid of us. Wait, Valentina and Valerie here too? No, they just contracted some staff to Lord Frieger for the Lord's Ball. I think a bunch of other businesses did the same thing. Man, can't believe I get myself pulled into another murder investigation. We're bad luck or what? The prosecutor told us that you heard the altercation through the air vents. Could you tell us exactly what you heard? Well, I didn't hear everything. I was taking a nap in this room when it happened. Why were you napping here? Didn't have a choice. I accidentally closed the door when the lock was engaged. Before I knew it, I was trapped here. Anyways, I heard the sound of some kind of struggle going on. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard Lord Frigga shout, "Who are you? What do you want?" That went on for a few seconds, then I heard the sound of someone getting stabbed. Did you hear the voice of the assailant? I didn't say anything, but I did hear them. Their voice was really raspy. I think I had the sore throat or something. Why did you enter the storage room anyways? The servants were complaining about rats running through the air vents, so they sent me to take care of it. I heard one of them running in the vents upstairs, and I followed it here. I figured it had nowhere else to go, so I opened it up and put a trap down. After I was done, I tried to leave, but the door was locked. I didn't have anything else to do, so I took a nap. Rats. Right, well. On we go. You know, this room looks identical to the one from the academy. Come on, tracker. Where are you? Achoo! I'm allergic to similar rooms. Wow, this place has not been cleaned. Oh! Sorry, I didn't mean to intrude. No, there's no need to apologise. But I would like to know what you're doing here. We're here on behalf of the Crown Prince, investigating the murder of William Frigga. But, oh, I see. My apologies, I didn't quite get your name. My name is Laffy Frigga. Hello. Apparently I'm going to argue with you later. I'm sorry for your loss, Lady Frigga, but do you mind if I ask you some questions? Of course. Prosecutor Steelwind told us that you were the last person to see him alive. Did you notice anything unusual about your father's behaviour? Well, he was extremely upset about something. I think Beatrice may have offended him during their meeting. The servant said that he wanted to be left alone. He retreated into his study immediately after their meeting. I tried to speak with him when the theft was reported, but he didn't much care about the missing artifact. He told me to leave him alone and let the King's Guard investigate the sword. That is an interesting thought. When did you speak with him last? It was before they activated the lockdown, until after 1 AM that night. And do you have any idea what he was doing in his study? What? No, I have no idea. Lady Frigga, is there something you're not telling us? It's important that we know about your father's actions before his death. I'm sorry, I don't know anything else. My father was a private man and didn't share much with anyone, even his own family. I wish I could be of more help, but I really don't know anything else. I noticed this room hasn't been cleaned recently. Do you know why? It's because I've forbidden the servants from cleaning this room. And why would you do that? Beatrice is very dear to me, and I couldn't bear to have her room disturbed after she left. This room was the only memory I had of her after she left. And how about the Sword of Spell Eating? Do you know how it ended up in this room? I'm not sure. It's possible someone planted it here to frame Beatrice. I can't say why they would choose this room, though. But Let's have a look around the room, shall we?
Repario Arcanum!
Uh-huh. There's a trace of transmutation magic under the bed. I can't see it clearly. Let me take a closer look. It's Crimson Lotus. Huh? It's my sword. What? So this is where it's been. This is also the room where they found the Sword of Spell Eating. Are the two thefts related somehow? But why? The only thing similar about them is that they're both swords. And they're also both red. It's a highly extravagant bed. It looks similar to the one in Miriam's dorm, as it does the rest of the room. It's a dresser covered in a layer of dust, not been touched in years. It's a table for guests, but it's extremely dusty. What kind of person was your father? A complicated one. My father was a complicated man. Indeed. He was a brilliant scholar and businessman, but he was a cold and distant father. I'd see. Did he have any enemies? As the head of House Frigga, he controlled nearly every banking house in Wyvengard. There were many people who resented his wealth and power. Yes, basically. Can you remember anyone specific? Perhaps someone that he'd slighted recently? There was Lloyd von Sanctus. Oh, not him again. Yep, I heard he was recently involved in a court case. My father has been using the controversy as an opportunity to slowly take control of von Sanctus Industries. And from what I've heard, he's been extremely bitter about that. Oh boy. Can't wait to speak to him again. No. Anyways, are there any other enemies he might have had? No, none that I can think of. What can you tell me about Beatrice Frigga? I hear that she fled the Frigga estate 5 years ago. Before she left, Beatrice was one of the most powerful mages I'd ever seen. She is incredible. At the age of 13, her talent for magic had even eclipsed my father's. But it was never enough for him. What do you mean? Before my mother died, he desperately wanted a son, but he only ever had daughters. Everyone thought that Beatrice would inherit would inherit House Frigga from my father, but our family knew the truth. William Frigga would never leave his legacy in the hands of a woman. What? No matter how hard Beatrice tried, my father would never acknowledge her accomplishments. He was extremely cruel to her. He constantly belittled her achievements and dismissed anything she said to him. And after the accident, he used her disability as an excuse to take away the little influence she had. Sounds like it. If it's not too painful for you, could you tell me more about Beatrice's accident? Is this even relevant to the investigation? Any small detail could make a difference. I need to learn everything I can. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but it was a magical experiment gone wrong. Beatrice was working on a project at the Imperial Academy. She was trying to create a new spell formula. We're still not sure what happened, but there was an adverse magical reaction. The resulting explosion seriously injured her and left her completely blind. I can't imagine how she must have taken that. Actually, she was probably the most unfazed by what happened. But that didn't matter. My father saw his opportunity. He told me that he was relieving her of her duties so she could recover. But I knew the truth. He was going to take away her political power and social standing. She was reduced to a mere decoration for our home. And that must have been why she left. Did she contact you during the time she was missing? No. No one had heard from her during that time. But as much as I was worried for her, I was also a little happy Unlike Miriam and I, she had finally broken free from my father. I have no idea what would cause her to return. That's a painting and a half. Painting with many people in it. Oh boy. Hello. Oh, wonderful. As if my day couldn't have gotten any worse. Von Sanctus, what are you doing here? The head of a noble house has just been murdered. I can't very well return to Oranax when my affairs are in such disarray. Anyways, forget what I'm doing here. What are you doing here? Oh, I just wanted to have a friendly chat with one of my favourite noblemen. I hear that you've been keeping busy since we last met. Must be difficult using your empire to House Frigga. Tyrion, we do need his help. Is that so? And what makes you think I'd ever help the likes of you? Not sure, to be honest. Because it would take suspicion off of you, and let's face it, with your reputation, you could use all the help you can get. How dare you? I'll have you know that I am still a respected member of the nobility. Respected? Is that why everyone is talking about your hand in Justin Way's death? Because the way I see it, being involved in another scandal would destroy what little remains of your reputation. But it makes no difference to me. And to be perfectly honest, I'd like nothing more than to drag you onto the stand and embarrass you a second time. Very well. If it means I won't have to endure your presence any longer, I'll oblige and answer your questions. But first, there is a room to examine.
Repario Arcanum!
It's a chair made from mahogany. A great part of this house just excludes wealth and mahogany. It's a door that leads to the coat room. It's a shelf filled with books. Fake books, they're completely blank. I think there's a... I think it's just a desk, actually. I thought it might be a piano at first, but no, it's just a chest of drawers back there. There's a window with a view of the outside. It's as if every room in this house needs a chandelier. What a waste of the kingdom's gold. It's a painting of some adventurers in a tavern. Ah, this must be Beatrice Frigga the First. The First? According to legend, she was one of the descendants of the 7 heroes of Wyvengard. She joined a band of adventurers that were travelling across the nation. It's hard to imagine the Friggas coming from such humble beginnings. Wait, what? What is it now? That muscular man in the corner, he just vanished. What are you on about? There was never a man there. Sorry, Tyrion, but he's right. No, I'm sure he was there. Are you feeling okay? Or perhaps it's our presents to, Eris. Anyway, that aside, honestly, it's just one mess after another with you. Mess? Wouldn't you have more to gain from William Frigga's death? On a surface level, you might be right, but it's far more complicated than that. House Frigga controls the banking houses. They're the main pillar of support for Wyvengard's economy. William's death could have unimaginable economic consequences, regardless of who inherits his house. They wouldn't be foolish enough to do something like that. That remains to be seen. Think what you will. There are others who would benefit from William Frigga's death. Do you imagine that other people would benefit from Frigga's death? Who specifically? If I had to venture a guess, I would say Lucio Steelwind benefits the most. You mean the prosecutor's father? But you just said that Lord Frigga's death could have unimaginable consequences for the economy. Do you think that brute cares about Wyvernguard's economy? No, all that man cares about is power, pure and physical power. House Steelwind and House Frigga have been fighting for control of Wyvernguard for generations. And in this longest-lasting era of peace, the Steelwind's military have become far less valuable to the Crown. If it weren't for Lady Steelwind's engagement to the Crown Prince, they might not even be considered a pillar family anymore. The death of William Frigga is probably exactly what Lucio Steelwind has been waiting for. And if her economy were to suffer, it would cause civil unrest. In a scenario like that, the Crown would have to rely on Steelwind's forces to maintain order. It's clear that you think Lucio Steelwind could have much to gain from this, but anyone else? Well, there is Harold Haroldson. That can't be his real name. Apparently it is. What would Mr. Haroldson possibly have to gain from Frigga's death? From what I heard, William was planning to defund the Haroldson Hall of History. Really? Why would he do that? I'm not so sure of the specifics. But supposedly, Lord Haroldson has refused to omit the less flattering parts of Wyvernguard's history from his exhibits. It's gotten blatant enough that he's drawn the ire of the king himself. They actually got into a very heated argument during the Lord's Ball about it. I heard that William declared that he would be removing House Haroldson from his estate. What can you tell me about the defendant in this case? What, she's your client, surely you would know her better than I. Humour me. Well, I'm sure you're aware that she fled the Frigga estate 5 years ago. In doing so, she dealt a blow to House Frigga's reputation and directly insulted the Crown Prince by breaking her engagement to him. Wait, Beatrice was engaged to Asta? Kinda figured. Yes, it was quite the scandal at the time, and Lucio wasted no time in pushing his daughter into taking Beatrice's place. Oh, is that why those three were so awkward last night? Honestly, the situation is just an absolute mess. Do you find Beatrice's return to be inconvenient for you? What are you on about now? Please don't insult my intelligence, Von Sanctus. Fine, if you must know, my son was arranged to marry William's daughter, Lafay. Lafay? Since Beatrice showed no signs of returning, it was apparent that Lafay would inherit House Frigga instead of her. I know that my days are numbered, so I took preemptive action. William wanted a male heir, and I needed to preserve my house, so we both came to an accord. My son and Lafay were engaged to be wed. House Von Sanctus would have been absorbed, but at least my Jaden would stand at the helm of House Frigga. You nobles are absolutely awful. Think what you will. You wouldn't expect a commoner to understand. That's the problem with your generation. You've no sense of duty or obligation. Lafay has already expressed resistance to this marriage, even though she was well aware of the details. Now I wonder if she'll hide behind her sister to end the engagement altogether. Huh. Not entirely sure how this is relevant to anything yet, but it most certainly is. Well, hello. Our armbands of intellect are also missing. The display case that held the armbands of intellect is empty. This display case is completely shattered. The thief was able to do this despite there being several abjuration spells protecting it. The display case holding the earrings of vitality is completely untouched. Whoever stole the artifacts ignored it.
Repario Arcanum!
Oh. The shards of broken glass. There are traces of evocation magic on the shattered glass. Evocation's the school of magic that creates and unleashes raw energy. It's the most primal of the 7 schools of magic. Someone must have used a powerful spell to blast the display case apart. Makes sense, I suppose. What can you tell me about this? Nothing. What can you tell me about that? Nothing. There must be something you know about, because there's more of your profile I can fill. I'm sure Beatrice's return must have been surprising for you. It is. To be perfectly honest, I've been hoping for years that she'd finally return. But now that she has, she's just gotten pulled into another one of our family's messes. What can you tell me about this map? What can you tell me about the second map? What can you tell me about this lockdown system? That man, he was my father, but I can't say I have fond memories of him. He must have been difficult to deal with. You have no idea. He was cruel, tyrannical, and only ever cared about his own legacy. He was willing to sacrifice anything and everything to maintain his power and status, including his own daughters. Sounds like his treatment of Beatrice was particularly harsh. It was. He never saw her as a worthy successor to our family's legacy, simply because she was a woman. Even after her accident, she used her disability as an excuse to strip her of any power she had left. I can only imagine how difficult that must have been for all of you. It's been a constant struggle, but we managed to survive. As bad as it sounds, now that he's gone, we might have a chance to rebuild our family. Here we go. You just met Lefe Frigga today, and she has no reason to trust you. She believes in Beatrice's innocence over anything else. She's usually sincere, so it's unlikely that she's actually involved in her father's murder. She might react well if you respond with similar sincerity. Is there something you're not telling us, Lefe? Because I have a feeling that you know more than you're letting on. What? What was your father doing in his study? I already told you, I don't know. My father was a private man. He wouldn't share something like that with me. He was making some sort of a change to his will, wasn't he? What? Why did you find the need to hide this from us? I didn't. We've only just met today, so I understand if you don't trust us. But the Inquisition thinks that Beatrice murdered your father, and they claim that she did so for his inheritance. That's absolutely absurd. Regardless, your father's inheritance is a likely motive behind his murder. Many people would have a lot to gain from his death, including you. Excuse me? How could you even think that I'd be capable of something like this? I didn't mean to imply that you were involved in this, but it's clear that the murderer's motive was to take control of House Frigga. This means that their plan heavily relied on who William Frigga was leaving his assets to. So, I need to know, Miss Frigga, how was your father planning to change his will? I don't know. I've already told you, my father was a secretive man. He didn't share the details of his estate with me. Is that really true, though? What? I already know about your arranged marriage to Jaden von Sanctus. And I also know that as part of this deal, Jaden would inherit House Frigga instead of you. You definitely knew about this, and you heavily resisted the marriage in an attempt to stall it. Which means that you had some idea of how your father's will was arranged. So, what aren't you telling me, Miss Frigga? I can't trust you. What? You're here on behalf of Crown Prince Aster. The Four-Pillar families and the Crown are much to gain from my father's death. How can you assure me that this information won't be used against my family? Well, nope. There's nothing I could possibly say to make you trust me, but please understand I'm only trying to find out who murdered your father. And to do that, I need to know everything that he was doing that night. I've no reason to trust you, but somehow I can tell that you're being sincere. Would he really protect Beatrice? I'll get to the truth of what really happened. Okay, if that's truly what you're planning to do, I'll tell you what I know. I wasn't trying to be uncooperative, but I didn't know who I could trust. Considering the circumstances, that's perfectly understandable. I'm not sure why, but my father was extremely upset that night. According to him, Beatrice had returned and was even more impudent than before. He must have been angry about something she said during their meeting. Did he tell you what their meeting was about? He didn't, and I honestly didn't really care. I was just so happy that my sister had finally returned. But my father clearly felt the opposite. Before he entered his study, he told me that he would be pruning the family tree. He was going to disinherit my sister and several other members of our family. He probably started drafting a new will to reflect that decision. Has anyone found the draft of this will? Well, it was one of the first things I looked for after the investigation began. Did anyone else know about this? No one. I didn't even tell Lady Stillwind when she was questioning me. Because it would have given Beatrice a motive to commit the murder. Anyways, thank you, Miss Frigga. Mr. Cuthbert? Yes? My sister is not a bad person. There's no way that she'd do something like this. She's in good hands. Ruby Tamura is the one defending her in the trial, after all. I hope so. Oh, Mr. Cuthbert, I had a feeling I'd be seeing you again. Hello again, Mr. Haroldson. Harold. Right, Harold. I'm sure you already know that I'm investigating the murder of William Frigga. and the prosecution suspects that someone used the Sword of Spell-Eating to break into Lord Trigger's room. I was wondering if I could ask you some questions about the theft last night. I'll tell you what I can, but I'm not sure how much help I'll be. I can't believe a museum owns such a powerful magic item. I would have expected the noble houses to take them for themselves. Well, the nobility of today don't have much use for items such as these. The power of a lord is based on politics rather than magical strength. The noble wouldn't want to wield the sword of a demon, even if the legends are their stories. A demon? Oh, right. The Sword of Spell-Eating is said to have been forged from a pact between a demon and a mage. Isn't making a pact with a demon just asking for trouble? They'd definitely betray you the first chance they got. Well, legends say the demons often drafted blood contracts for this reason. Wait, do you mean like a legally binding contract? Their concept is similar, but once you sign a blood contract, both you and the demon are magically compelled to fulfill its terms. It's said that violating its terms result in instant death for the offender, no matter who it is. So, I guess there's some protection. Well, as an attorney, I'm sure you understand that it's possible to exploit and use loopholes in any contract. And according to the legends, demons take great pride in their ability to deceive and corrupt people. According to the prosecution, the theft took place during the Lord's Ball. Shouldn't there have been plenty of witnesses in the gallery at that time? That's the strangest thing. Supposedly, the gallery room was completely empty when it happened. What? That can't be right. And honestly, I have no idea how anyone could produce enough magic to shatter the display case anyways. Were the wards protecting the case that powerful? They were powerful, but that's not the issue here. It would be one thing to dispel the wards and remove the glass protecting it, but it's another thing entirely to completely annihilate the abjuration wards and shatter the glass. And something like that would require an extremely powerful spell, far more powerful than what would have been needed. So you're saying the force applied was excessive? Yes, that's not the worst of it. It's clear that the Sword of Spell-Eating wasn't the only item that was taken. I can see that. Don't you what me. It's blitheringly obvious. You mentioned that another item was stolen? Yes, it's extremely concerning. After the Sword of Spell-Eating was reported missing, I checked the other exhibits. That's when I discovered that armbands of intellect had been stolen as well. And unlike the Sword of Spell-Eating, we still haven't found the armbands. The thief didn't shatter the glass. Exactly. Wherever the armbands were actually replaced with a very well-made replica. Huh. Huh. That means they're probably unrelated to one another. Or at least not directly related to one another. That's interesting indeed. You mentioned that someone would have needed a powerful spell to shatter the display case. Wouldn't that narrow down the list of suspects for the theft? Not everyone attending the ball could cast spells that powerful. Well, according to the Inquisition, Beatrice Friega's magic was powerful enough to have done this. Discounting the fact that she's completely blind. Yes, I'm well aware of that. It doesn't sit quite right with me either. Was there anyone else at the Lord's Ball capable of matching Beatrice's power? Only the heads of the 4 pillars could have evoked magic this powerful. But apparently Beatrice is an exception to that. But the cases can be opened normally, can't they? Otherwise, how would you transport the artifacts from place to place? Oh yes, the magical locks on the case can be disabled. How are they normally disabled? They can be turned on and off using a spoken password. And how many people know this password? Only myself. I personally oversee the transport of these items whenever they're moved. Huh. Well, he could have stolen the armbands, but the sword? Yeah, sure, he can disable the lock, but it doesn't mean he can shatter all that glass. Harold, a witness told us that you got into an argument with William Frieger on the night of the murder. Was William Frieger planning on defunding the Haraldson Hall of History? Yes, he was. He made that very clear. But that doesn't mean that I had anything to do with his murder. We're not saying that you did, but I need to explore every possibility. So, I have to ask, did your argument that night turn hostile? I'll admit that our discussion turned heated, but it never escalated to threats or violence. William was being unreasonable and I was frustrated, but that's all there was to it. Did you have any conflicts with him prior to that night? We have had disagreements in the past. He was receiving pressure from the royal family about what I was displaying in my museum. The king believed that some of my exhibits were too controversial for the public eye. What do you mean? I'm sure you've noticed the rising tensions between the common folk and the nobility. I've never been one to shy away from the bloodier parts of Wyvernguard's history. The citizens must know about these parts of history, otherwise we're liable to repeat them. However, the king believed that my historical exhibits did nothing but dig up old wounds. Thank you for your time, Harold. Harold. I think we'll both be on our way now. We have a lot of info, but none of it really leads anywhere. So many people have a motive to kill William Frieger, but who actually did it? Motives aside, let's go over the events that happened that night. It all started when the sword of spell eating was stolen. We don't have a specific suspect, but we do know something about them. It would be one thing to dispel the wards and remove the glass protecting it, but it's another thing entirely to completely annihilate the abjuration wards and shatter the glass. Doing something like that would require an extremely powerful spell, far more powerful than what would have been needed. The thief was a powerful mage. It's the only way that they could have shattered the magically reinforced glass. But what about Harold? He could have just unlocked it using his password. He could have stolen the sword and staged a robbery, but he couldn't have shattered the glass. Only a powerful mage could have done that, and I doubt Harold would lie about that when we can easily confirm it with Steelwind. Right, but then what happened next? They brazenly stole the Sword of Spell Eating. This caused Harold to report the theft of the King's Guard. After Lord Haraldson reported the theft, the Inquisition discreetly placed the manor on lockdown. They searched every room in the manor to try and find it. It was eventually found in Beatrice's bedroom. And that led them to believe she had stolen it. That's correct. The King's Guard moved to arrest her, but Prince Asta ordered them to step down. And then there's Lafay's statement. My father was extremely upset about something. I think Beatrice may have offended him during their meeting. The servant said that he wanted to be left alone. He retreated into his study immediately after their meeting. They tried to speak with him when the theft was reported, but he didn't much care about the missing artifact. This happened before they activated the lockdown. It was a little after 1 AM that night. Lafay's account gives us a clear fact about when William died. Well, yes, but also no. William Frieger was murdered after the lockdown was activated, as we already established ages and ages ago. This means that whoever killed him bypassed the lockdown and broke into the magically locked room. They had to have used the sword, right? That's likely, but not necessarily true. An anti-magic field would have had the same effect. The murderer could have stolen the Sword of Spell Eating to throw off the investigation. But Anti-Magic Field is a high-level spell. Not many mages would be able to cast it. I doubt any of the nobles here will let us see their spell compendiums. But because of how powerful Anti-Magic Field is, we can conclude that the murderer is a powerful mage. This actually narrows down our list of suspects. That's still not concrete evidence, though. And we haven't even spoken to all the suspects yet. Either way, it's a good start, and it's not as if we're defending this case. We're prosecuting it. Da-da-da! Eventually. Kind of. Maybe. Oh, Mr. Cuthbert. Oh, hi. I didn't expect to see you here. Ah! Eris, what are you doing here? Ah, Beatrice is actually an acquaintance of my father. He sent me here to help her through this ordeal. Have either of you seen Miss Tamora? I have some things to share with her. She was just here, but she left to retrieve some documents from her office. Do you have any idea when she'll be back? She didn't say. But if your discussion has something to do with the case, I could pass on a message to her. Okay, let me tell you what I know. I see. You've certainly been very thorough. Yeah, but I still have no concrete evidence that points to anyone. What? Sorry, I was just deep in thought. Beatrice, I'm sure you're aware that Prince Asta has your best interests at heart. I know. Even though we haven't spoken for the last 5 years, I still consider him a dear friend. Then I suppose you have no issue with me sharing these findings with him. Of course not. Is something wrong, Mr. Cuthbert? You look a little pale. Mr. Cuthbert, perhaps you should get some rest. You look dreadfully tired. Beatrice, you weren't actually involved in this, were you? Tyrion? Do you suspect me now, Mr. Cuthbert? You didn't answer my question, Beatrice. As if I'd ever need to justify it with a response. But no, Mr. Cuthbert, I was not responsible for my father's murder. Cuthbert? But Miss Tamora? Miss Tamora, can I speak with you alone for a second? Okay. What's wrong? Is everything okay? Miss Tamora, Beatrice, she actually did murder William Frieger. What are you talking about? How could you possibly know that? I used the Eye of Horus on her. She conspired with someone else to orchestrate William Frieger's death. Have you told anyone else about this? No, it's not as if they'd believe me anyways. You're the only other person who knows about my abilities. Okay, just stay quiet about this for the time being. Anyways, I need to get ready. The trial starts in half an hour. But what? You're not seriously going to defend her, are you? Of course I am. I'm her attorney. But she's guilty. I saw it. Look, at this point I don't know what you saw. Do you think I could just abandon a client minutes before a trial? No, but it's not for either of us to decide who's guilty and who's not. Everyone has a right to an attorney. Our court system needs a defense attorney and a prosecutor to keep things fair. More importantly, you had no right to use the Eye of Horus on my client without my permission. But what? But... I'd have time to argue about this. We will be talking about this later. Hey, Tyrion, is everything okay? Celeste, I think Beatrice was actually behind this. What? Alright, I believe you. What? You wouldn't say something like that if you weren't sure, right? But if what you're saying is true, what do we do now? I don't think we need to do anything. What? Steelwind is handling the prosecution, and she's definitely no pushover. If Beatrice is truly guilty, I'll just have to trust her to get the job done. Either way, I don't think we're in any position to get involved. Alright, if you say so.
Objection!
Your Honor, I'm afraid you can't pass a verdict just yet. But, Mr. Cuthbert? Cuthbert? What the hell are you doing? I don't know. But what I do know is that there was a massive contradiction in Miriam Friega's testimony. Well, this is another fine mess we've gotten ourselves into.